Hey guys, it's Ryan here with Hobbies and Man once again, and today we are doing another first impressions review. Today we're going to be looking at What's Wrong with Secretary Kim, Volume 1. This is one that I've been kind of interested in getting, and once I got it, it took me a long time to read it, and that is mostly because I've just had a lot of other stuff to get to. But I saw this initially when I saw a video from a Spanish manga tuber. I saw that you could buy the Spanish edition at Barnes & Noble, and I was going to order it eventually, but then Issei Press exploded onto the scene with a bunch of great titles, and this was one of them, so I decided to wait. Then I got it, and then it took me forever. But I'm happy that I finally read it. I enjoyed it. So Secretary Kim, Volume 1 is written by Kyung Yoon Young. Her name is very difficult to pronounce. And that's the original story. And then the art is done by Myung Mi Kim. As you guys can see right there. The spine looks like this, and as you can see, this is a Yen Press title, although this is actually technically a Issei Press title at this point, but this was printed before Issei Press became like an actual company, I guess, or like an imprint. So I'm guessing future printings of this will have the Issei Press logo, but for now we have the Yen Press one. So yeah, the demographic here is teen, although the characters are in their 20s, late 20s, early 30s, right? So your mileage may vary there, right? In terms of genre, this is an office romance, and you could also say it's a drama, depending on your preference for that kind of genre, or maybe your tolerance for what constitutes drama and what doesn't, right? Like, so, you know, everything is dramatic to an extent, and then there must be a threshold before it becomes actually part of the genre and not just a function of storytelling, right? And so whatever you define that line to be might define whether this is a drama or not. For me, I would say that it is a drama just because it reads more like a telenovela or like a soap opera than it does anything else that I read, which is because I read mostly sci-fi and fantasy, and so anything that deviates from that is going to be much more noticeable to me than the usual, right? So yeah, in terms of adaptations, I think this has a live action. I think my sister mentioned watching it, so I'm pretty sure that there is a live action for this. And this is also very similar to Business Proposal. It's kind of in the same lane, and I'm not really sure which one came first. But I mean, they're very comparable, right? It's like the Superman to their Spider-Man, right? Like it's basically the same type of character, right? Maybe Captain America is a better comparison for Superman. I'm not really sure, but you kind of get the idea, right? Korean manhwa, Korean stories in general, actually, anything that gets exported to the US that's consumable content, tends to have a lot of copycat clones, right? Not the same way that manga does. Manga is a little bit less noticeable, I guess. Although that's not true. You can argue that a lot of light novels are basically the same thing, right? And they're just clones of each other. But manga itself is usually not the case, right? Unless it's an adaptation of a light novel, in which case then it is pretty similar. But this is distinct from Business Proposal, but it is quite similar, right? So yeah, the premise is that there's this woman, Secretary Kim, and she is the Pepper Potts to this guy's Tony Stark. And I don't remember the name of this guy. Yoongi Lee, I think is his name. And, well, this guy's a crazy narcissist, but he is an insanely effective manager, right? And so he needs a hyper-capable secretary who happens to be Secretary Kim. The thing is that they've been working together for 9 years. Secretary Kim is nearly 30 years old, and she has decided that it's time for her to move on from the corporate life and move on to find a different way to live her life. She wants to find a man, find a house, and have kids with her husband, right? And so in order to do this, she needs to have time, and because of her demanding boss, she doesn't. And so she thinks that quitting is the best option. However, this goes completely counter to the wishes of her boss, and so they kind of struggle throughout the whole volume to figure out what to do. And then the boss decides that if Secretary Kim needs a husband and a life like that he will be the one to provide it for her, and that way she will stay with him. And essentially, it's like a little bit romantic in the sense that, like, oh, he's just stupid and doesn't understand that he's in love with her, but also it's kind of like weird because he is kind of like misogynistic to an extent. Like, he does have comments and ideas about women that are kind of very clearly like, oh, dude, you're fucked, right? But it is not necessarily because he vehemently believes these things in the sense of like he can't change his mind. It's more like he just doesn't have any experience otherwise, right? Which is kind of a weird thing to kind of think about, but it kind of works for the character. So it is what it is. And so the chapter ends, or the story ends with him deciding that he's going to woo Secretary Kim, and so shenanigans will ensue in the next volume, right? And so, yeah, I really like the art. I think it's wonderful. And I actually find the characters here to be very masterfully done. Like, I really enjoy these characters. I really understand who these characters are, what they are, in terms of, like, who they function as, like, what their archetype is, but also what they want as individuals, right? So it's understandable. Also, there's a bunch of funny side characters that interact with Lee's character, with Young Yoon Lee, who are just like his friends or his parents, who just happen to bounce off his ridiculousness really, really well. I actually also really like this because it reminds me of The Big Bang Theory. Now, I know that sounds ridiculous, but in my opinion, the Big Bang Theory's best character groups are Sheldon and Penny, right? And Sheldon and Penny have this very specific type of relationship, which is like, he's crazy and super successful, and she's down on her luck, but very able to balance him out. And essentially, Secretary Kim and Young Yoon Lee are the same type of characters, except progressed in time to the point where they're both successful, right? And so this kind of like manages to give me the guilty pleasure of having like a Penny Sheldon ship romance type situation that the show Big Bang Theory never gave me, without having to actually be that, which is interesting. It's a really odd thing to say. I know it probably is not what anyone was expecting to come out of my mouth, but I really like that show. I like those two character dynamics, and it's a really interesting pairing that I've not really had a lot of success in finding other versions of, right? And so I found one here, and so I like this even more now than I did just in general because of how good the story is. So yeah, that's kind of a general thought process there. Otherwise, there really isn't too much else to say. I mean, it's good. You guys should read it. So yeah, there you go. Those are my thoughts on Secretary Kim, or actually the full title is What's Wrong with Secretary Kim, which is a phrase that Young Lee says to himself quite often in this first volume, right? So there you go. Thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. Leave a comment down below and, do all of that stuff.